Steph. I'm the Learning Manager here at the Museum of Australian Democracy at Old Parliament House. We are a place with many historic spaces, but also we get to talk about the importance of your voice in our democracy. Now, here I am in the press gallery. This is a space where journalists would have worked, where they wrote stories and did news reports on what was happening in Parliament. We are very special here in Australia, and we actually have a space in our chambers, in both the House of Representatives and the Senate, where the press can sit and watch what's happening so they can report back to all Australians. Now, I wonder if you're noticing what's behind me. You can see these pigeonholes. We've got lots of newspapers here, radio and television. All of these journalists would have worked within this building.
G'day mate, how are you?
But I'm keen to show you some spaces. I want to take you into the press gallery so you can see the House of Representatives and where they would have worked, but also a sneak behind the scenes to see the offices where they would have typed up all of those stories. So come with me, let's go to the press gallery. We're up here in the press gallery, which is located in the House of Representatives. Such an important part of our democracy is having a free press. This is a really special space as it means that journalists have access to exactly what's happening in the chamber. So they would sit here, they would be able to hear what the politicians were saying, and they'd be able to tell the stories of what was happening in the debates down on the floor in the chamber. Such a privileged position to be able to watch what was going on, but also for the parliamentarians to know that what they were saying could be heard by journalists. There's a lot of different journalists who would have worked here, but you'll notice that it's not a very big space. Not very many would have fitted across the two sections that are up here. But take a good look at the beautiful view over the chamber. Let's take a look at some of the offices where the press would have worked. First up, we're going to check out the 1920s. I wonder what technologies they used back in the day. So here we have a very spacious office with typewriters in there. There's only 2 journalists that would have worked in this room because when we opened in 1927, we would have had 6 or 7 permanent journalists. They would have been writing newspaper stories. So that's why the typewriters are important in this space. Can you hear them typing away their story? It's important that we meet that deadline. When Parliament was sitting, we probably would have had around 25 journalists travelling from across the country to work up here in this tiny space. But let's move on to the 1980s and see how technology has changed. Come this way. So here we have another very small space where radio presenters would have worked, and the technology has come quite a long way. So we've got some more modern typewriters in here. We've also got tapes. There might be some familiar things that you recognise of ways that you can create media as well. But this little office would have fitted 3 staff. Now don't worry, they didn't all work in here at the same time, but they would have done shifts to make sure that throughout the day and night, someone was always here in case a news story broke. I wonder if you'd enjoy doing this job. Let's go and have a look at one of the other offices. Come this way. By the 1980s, there were lots of journalists that were working in Parliament House, and whilst this room may look spacious, there were 17 radio and television people working in here.
To give you an idea of the layout, this is radio current affairs over here, Radio Australia here, television current affairs here, down in this corner television news, and along here radio news. In this room, of course, nothing is private, and you have to develop a certain sort of body language to avoid constantly bumping into people.
They were busy trying to get their stories done, so imagine all of that noise and hustle and bustle that would have been happening here. Let's take a look at some of the spaces where they would have recorded their news reports. Follow me. You can see all of the soundproofing on the walls here. You'll also notice the old tapes. A little studio. So these are some very small spaces that our journalists would have had to have worked in. So imagine that you're on a tight deadline, you're trying to get your news report done very quickly so it can be out to the Australian people before someone gets the scoop on you. Good evening and welcome to our 7:30 news report. My name is Stephanie. Well, here we are in the ABC broadcasting studio. This is a space that would have been used between the 1970s right through the 1980s to create news stories for television. Specifically, they would have been able to interview politicians in here, create political stories about issues that were happening up in the chamber.
Liberal leader John Howard today took the biggest gamble of his political career.
The government has been caught off guard by the intensity of the anti-ID.
And so a review is finally underway, in the Prime Minister's words, to seek out any unintended consequences of the new tax.
Now this space is very tiny, and so it would really only fit a news presenter, the person they were interviewing, and a camera person. So we've moved through the press gallery and we've seen typewriters that help to create articles for newspapers. We've had a look at radio and our little studios where they would have recorded those pieces, and now we're sitting in a TV studio. So you can see that media has come a long way. I wonder how you find out what's happening in the world. Where do you get your news stories from? Is it the internet or your teachers or family? Are you getting your information from podcasts or panel shows on the TV or from social media? An important question I have for you is, with all of these different types of media that we now have access to, how do you find out what's reliable and accurate? We're looking for things like, is it a balanced point of view? Are we showing both sides of an argument? Is it an opinion piece or is it factual? Do they have quotes from reputable people and statistics to back up their information? There are lots of things that we can look for in our TV reports, in our radio and in print to help us to decide whether a piece is trustworthy. It's important to have accurate information because this helps us form our opinions on particular issues. We can decide where we sit on an issue, if we're for or against, whether we want to get involved, whether we want to take action in our local communities, whether we need to know more information. It can lead to things like writing to your local newspaper or your member, peacefully participating in protest, or signing a petition. It's really important that we have the media here in Parliament House because we can't always be here in person. And there are lots of bills being debated in the chambers that affect all Australians. So by having the media present here in the building, it allows them to ask questions on our behalf. They can dig a little deeper and find out more if things just don't seem quite right. Creating media is really important. So we've looked at some of the ways that media was created here in Old Parliament House, but there are lots of other ways that you can create media, from writing your own podcast and recording it, creating a short piece to camera. You could also write your own news articles or perhaps a newsletter. You might like to write a blog. And don't forget, photography. I wonder what type of media you would like to create. Think about an issue that you're passionate about and the best way that you can communicate your message to others. Is it a news story? Is it through a television piece? Now let's remind ourselves about the importance of reliability and being accurate. Will you interview someone? Where will you get your facts from? How will you make sure that the information you're communicating to others is trustworthy? I think you should give yourselves a deadline. And that reminds me, look at the time. I better get back to my deadline. It's pretty good.